Hey, it's Nick. We got a big topic this week: artificial intelligence. Yeah, it's a good one. It's a juicy one. You wanna stick around for this one. No sponsor this week. I will say, since we are starting back up the pod, we're looking to collaborate, get some partnerships, get some sponsors. If you work for a company that would love to sponsor the podcast, shoot us an email, minordetailspodcast@gmail.com. Or if you have any other thoughts or ideas, you can always email us. Even questions. We like to occasionally answer questions on the pod. And also give us the like, give us the subscribe, give us the 5-star review, all those things. Whatever your medium of listening to podcast is, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, you know what to do. All right, I'll keep it short and sweet. Let's hit the amazing intro by KYOSHY the Kid. I'm Nick.
And I'm James.
And we're two designers in the big city.
Sweating the small stuff.
James, how you been, man?
I've been all right. How you been?
Been good. It's nice to get back in the groove,
Yeah. We're grooving.
Yeah. Doing the weekly pod now.
I know. Look at us.
We gotta get some good topics, research and stuff. I don't know.
Anything happened to you in the last week of note?
Oh, let's see. You know what? I did go to some design events. I don't know. It seems like there's a few design events going around the city.
Yeah.
This month, and I'm not entirely sure if it's like a coordinated thing or not. But yeah, there was 2 events last night. I went to see Kiki Chudakova's new bench in Dumbo.
Nice.
She designed a bench called the Spiral of Life, and it's a public bench, which is kind of fun to do.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful little organic design. Has kind of these stone slabs that are put vertically and then kind of looks like a wave. I think that was her inspiration, was like watching the river, the East River, the Hudson River.
Yeah.
And then I also went to a launch of Sophie Lou Jacobson's lighting collection for In Common With, which is much more, I would say more like kind of art side of design. The very beautiful, like glass blown lights.
Yeah.
But
that's awesome.
Yeah. What have you been up to in the past week?
I have
so much.
First of all, I haven't been invited to a single design event. Everybody's James has a child now. He won't want to go see a public bench.
Well, here's the thing. Here's what would happen, James, is I would invite you to something. You'd be like, sorry, I can't, or,
I appreciate the invite.
It's you want to be wanted. That's
yeah, exactly. I want to be desired. I would end up bringing Clara, and she would climb all over the bench.
No, that would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, the bench is like public, and
there you go.
Kids are climbing on it.
There you go. So. What if I just show up to open bar design events with my 2-year-old?
The fancy lighting was not. Yeah, that was like expensive lighting. Like $5,000 lights. We don't want Clara.
Yeah, Clara off.
No.
Could you get down, sweetheart?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be.
That's funny.
Got the new iPhone. Well, I don't have it yet, but I ordered it.
Yeah, likewise.
You ordered one too?
Likewise. It's been a couple generations, although you have a better claim over. You've got a 10.
Yeah,
right?
10S. So I'm 4 years in.
Yeah, I've got an 11.
Yeah, that's still.
But it's got quite a cracked back.
Oh no.
Yeah.
It
went to the chiropractor and you totally destroyed my phone.
You have a case though, right? Or you're.
Yeah, I had to get a case,
okay.
Or else I would just be like slicing my hands open. Texting on my phone.
I realized something about the new iPhone that I missed last podcast. And it's kind of a hot take, I think. And I don't think anyone has talked about it yet. So I have the 10S.
Bring the heat, Nick.
And it has a notch.
Uh-huh.
I think it was no, it wasn't the first one with a notch.
The 10?
10 was the first one.
I think it was the first one with a notch, yeah. Okay.
But mine was the 10S, so it was like a year later, which is the same phone, just different, whatever. So I was just comparing what I have now to the new one, and with the dynamic island, and I was looking at dimensions of the new iPhone versus my 10s, and I realized something. You know, I have kind of the small one, and I'm buying the small one, the 14, and the width of this is the same, but the new iPhone 14 is, I want to say, 8 millimeters taller.
Oh.
Which I then realized is just, they didn't get rid of the notch. They essentially just added screen around the notch.
Right. Yeah.
So it's the same.
It's the same exact dimensions. It's like same placement of everything.
Right. It's like the placement feels like it's the same. It's just, instead of shrinking it, they just added more, so it looks like it's smaller. That is my beef. I think that's. I don't. Think
Are you outraged by this?
I'm not outraged. But it's just like a funny thing, because in my head I was like, wait, I think they just tricked everyone.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like they shrunk the notch; they just added more phone.
Right.
Essentially.
Right. I think I've brought this up on the podcast before, maybe, but I always think about like what future phone infographics are going to look like, because, like, how do you represent
like
a
an
phone?
icon?
Yeah, how do you represent a phone with an icon when, like, we're getting into an increasingly like notchless, buttonless world? It's just going to be a rectangle with maybe some lines on it to represent like the reflectivity of the glass.
Well, it's
or like maybe the ear slit, but I feel like eventually they're going to put the microphone in like between the like glass and the case.
It'll be gone. I think it's kind of like the save icon, right? Where it's like a left, you know, because you have the phone icon,
right?
The handset, but I think it's gonna stay, man. I think it's like the save icon, where it almost becomes its own meaning.
Wait, so you mean like a notch?
No, I'm saying you're saying like what's the phone symbol going to turn into?
Yeah.
If it's just going to be a rectangle.
Yeah.
You know, currently phone symbol is like the banana shaped thing. I can't even say phone.
But I mean, I don't just mean on the phone. Like, I mean like when somebody is representing the phone as an icon in like a different setting, like apart from your phone.
Oh, like a storyboard or something.
Yeah, like a storyboard, or like even an infographic, like in a public space that represents a phone.
Yeah.
How do you represent the phone when like the front of it is increasingly becoming featureless?
Right.
It's just like screen.
Yeah. I guess that makes sense, because it used to be you would have a little button at the bottom.
Yeah.
The home button.
Yeah.
And now there's no home button. And there's like a notch now, I guess, on some things.
I don't know.
It's interesting.
Yeah. We need like a graphic designer to weigh in on that.
Yeah, that's my hot take.
Yeah, nice. Oh, I wanted to bring up something because, you know, obviously I haven't discussed this with the wider world, but I've of course discussed this or shown this to you. But an update that I have is last month in July I bought some Yeezy foam runners.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Because like, okay, when the foam runners first came out, I was like, those are cool, but I definitely shouldn't just like go in on it, because I wasn't sure if I was just like wrapped up in the moment.
Yeah.
And so I've literally been looking at that shoe for like 2 years since it's been released, and been like, you know, like, I still love this shoe.
It's
like,
iconic.
I still think it's a great, awesome shoe. I mean, especially as an industrial designer, I mean, maybe this isn't the same for everybody, but I like the sort of like Flyknit kind of shoes that still are somewhat like, you know, that's kind of like the standard sneaker.
Right.
Like, they don't excite me. Like, I love this sort of like EVA shoe revolution that's happening right now, because I feel like it's just pure sculpture.
Right. Yeah.
And I love that part of design. I love form. And so like, I was like, I need to buy this. Like, it's time for me to buy this.
I mean, it is one of those kind of iconic products where it felt very bold and out there when Kanye released it, you know, it's almost like a Cybertruck of the footwear industry.
Right. Yeah, but in like the total opposite direction, more like Art Nouveau rather than whatever you would call the Cybertruck, Cyberpunk. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
You got the black ones, right?
Huh? Yeah, black.
Nice.
Yeah, Onyx.
And they make them in your size?
They do.
Didn't they not make them in your size or something for a while?
No, it was just that they were really expensive, I think.
Okay.
But it was funny when we had our meetup, our Minor Details meetup, Lucas from Doris Dev, I wore them to the meetup. And Lucas from Doris Dev was like, he was looking at my shoes and I was talking about them and he was like, yeah, you know, at a certain size, they just don't scale right. It's like, oh, come on, man.
Oh,
because
no.
I mean, I am
they were just too big?
Unfortunately, a size 15. My wife says that it looks like I have hooves.
Oh my god.
But I still think that they're sweet. I love those shoes.
I think they look cool. I didn't think that, James. I don't think they look hooves.
And of course, like right after I bought them, I went and bought some Seth Fowler Apothecary socks because I was like, I need some nice socks if I'm going to be wearing these shoes around.
And got to buy the Friends products.
Yeah. And so, I've only worn them like 2 or 3 times in public.
The Yeezys?
The Yeezys, yeah.
Really? Why? You scared?
Well, I've also been like, you know, as I said in the last episode, I've been biking a lot.
Oh, right. Okay.
And I'm not sure how they would fare in the butt. Like, I don't know if they would just get torn up, like against the pedal or, you know, like against the like chain guard. I don't know what kind of scuffing would happen. So I'm just like kind of hesitant to take them biking. But yeah, I don't know. They also feel like a special occasion shoe. They feel like, you know, like a dress shoe or something.
That's hilarious. I wonder what Kanye would think about that.
I don't know.
I mean, speaking of he's been on his little kick recently.
His
business debacle.
Yeah. So he's like parted ways with Gap.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Just watched I guess an interview this morning that was talking about it. He was, you know, rambling his normal rant.
Yeah, wearing those new sunglasses that I don't know what to think about those.
Well, they're flexible, right?
Yeah, they're like
it's just like a piece of Mylar, essentially.
Yeah, it's like
die cut probably.
Yeah, I'm just like I really don't know what to make of them.
You know what it kind of reminds me of when you go to the eye doctor and they give you the plastic little like sunglasses. And they're like just really flimsy, you know, or like movie theater, like I don't know.
I mean, it feels very on brand of like organic sort of like future nostalgia,
right?
Because it feels very,
it's like 2000s,
like late
kinda.
90s, early 2000s, that kind of vibe.
I mean, that's the next trend, man.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, we're in our 90s clear plastic, but like give it another 5 years, we're gonna be in 2000s, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the topic that we're going to approach later, I think is going to take us into the next like Art Nouveau phase, like the organic 90s Art Nouveau phase that we saw. I
mean, there's been a lot of business things going on, I feel like, in the design world. Everyone's like...
What's that?
I mean, just like design news in terms of like...
Mergers and acquisitions and
departures, you know? I guess the other thing that happened was Adobe bought Figma.
Yeah.
Which I've dabbled with Figma a little bit. And obviously, you know, I'd say everyone uses Adobe products. But I think it's a nice little software. I was considering using it for like mood boards and presentations, but I know it's pretty heavy into the UX scene. A lot of UX designers use it.
That's what I understand, but I've also seen like industrial designers use it so at Peloton we use Miro, which is like somewhat comparable, except I don't know that they use it for like UX UI, but it's
like a mood board kind of app, right?
Yeah, you can use it for like
mind mapping.
Presentations, mind mapping, like I mean, especially during sort of pandemic times where everybody was remote, like using that as sort of like a shared brainstorming space where it's like live and you can see everybody's mouse and you can like like I started sketching in it, of course.
Yeah.
Like
Wait, you can sketch in it directly, like with your phone?
well,
Or you just
yeah, you probably
post
could with
sketches?
your phone, but I was doing it on my iPad with my pencil. But it's like it's similar to the Notes app in that
Okay.
it has like only a couple
Right.
tools.
Rudimentary.
But it's
That's kind of cool, though.
it's very you know me, like I'm a sucker for like an app that's like super simple in terms of like, you know, sketching tools. Like I just want the minimal amount. But yeah, I mean, I have found it very good for just like, I've incorporated it just into my everyday life. Like I like, it's sort of like a limitless.
You put your grocery list on it?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like a limitless canvas space that you can add frames into, but you can just drop images into, and you can then download those images or download PDFs like of your slides. And the nice one of the like super shortcuts that I've learned over the past couple of years is like, I don't think I knew until I came back to Peloton and we were using Miro that like if you snip something even on Mac, but like if you use the snip tool,
Yeah.
you can just like paste,
Right.
like go directly to paste.
Yeah.
Like
Control V.
I
Yeah.
didn't know that, but like just like snipping things and dropping them into Miro to just you know, speed up the workflow, like, you know, just like snipping or rendering, like
Right.
doing key shot renderings that you don't even render. You're just like waiting for them to clear up,
Right.
take a snip, drop it into Miro, like get a nice little like iteration story going.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of feels like these apps have become the new pinup boards.
Yeah.
You know, like pinup mood boards or like sketch boards or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, anymore, I find Pinterest like really constricted, like in terms of like the UI.
Yeah.
Like the way that you can interact with like the imagery, like it's just not, it's like too, yeah, it's too constricted.
One thing that I've thought about a lot, especially with my design process, yeah, especially like rethinking a lot of the structure of my studio, is I've used these digital pinup boards, mood board organizing tools, and I've tried a few of them. But I think it's missing this one key feature, and that's this static state of the real pinup board, right? Because in real life, you can pin stuff up and it just stays there.
Right.
And you walk by it and it might catch your eye one day, or you might think of a new thing. It's kind of like this subconscious thing in the back of your mind.
Sure.
And it's much harder to do that or find that in this digital space.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what the solution is, but I think that's one thing that I've thought about a lot is like, I think it's really important to have your ideas out on the counter or pinned
Yeah.
up, just so that your subconscious mind can be working on them.
Yeah, I like that. That is nice. I think the one thing that I like that maybe you wouldn't have with a physical pinup board is kind of this like more free flowing record of your process. Cause like that's where I use Miro. Like literally my process in Miro is like, you know, snake like. It just like goes around the board and just kind of like flows in different directions. And that's kind of what I like about it. Like I agree that there's still something to like pinning something up, but I feel like that's kind of like the next step after you've like been just like fussing around with Miro. Like you then decide like what's worth
Pinning up.
what's worth printing and pinning
That's
up.
fair. That's a good point too.
But yeah, like in my personal life, like I just one board that I started to create was this. I've started recording from my memory like objects that I encountered throughout my life that like recur in my memory all the time.
Interesting.
Like so, trying to find images of them and put them on the Miro board because like I'm like
Objects you own?
objects that I owned. Like
seen
throughout my
online.
entire life.
Okay.
Objects that I owned,
like a
objects
toy
that
when
I
you were a
just
kid.
encountered.
Yeah.
Like, and just trying to like think like, you know, what is there a common thread, or like, are they influencing me in some way, or like, am I reaching an aesthetic now that like it is something that I was fascinated by as a kid. You know, I think it's important for us as designers, industrial designers, like whoever you are, if you're working with physical products, like I think it's interesting to try and think about like the products that had an impact on you.
Yeah.
Like however small, but like there's obviously products that had a substantial impact, but then there's other products that like you just remember sitting in your room as a kid just like staring at something for a long time.
Yeah, I definitely like when I think about my toys as a kid, that's where I like start to daydream of like, oh man, I remember like this Transformer or like, you know, whatever it was. It was like, I remember like specifically like some of the Transformers that like, I think maybe my first one, I think it was just a fighter jet, and I don't even think it was a branded Transformer. I think it's off-brand.
Oh really?
But it was so cool. I don't know.
That's cool.
Just like, you know, one of those things that's like, oh, I've never played. Oh, you know what another cool toy was that I had? Did you ever have those cars that you pulled them back and they zoomed,
mm-hmm.
but this one would zoom and then launch an airplane after it started.
Whoa!
Yeah, so it was like a spring-loaded airplane, little tiny airplane, and it would fit on the car, and it looked like a car. And then when it stopped, the car stopped, it would like pop the airplane out and shoot the airplane too.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's very cool. I could see that being very memorable.
Yeah.
Was that a branded or just like a off-brand?
It probably had a brand. Actually, I'm sure it was like something like, Car Flyers or something. I don't know.
Yeah. That's cool. But yeah, I've recorded that. And then the other thing is like, if I'm ever shopping for something for the apartment, like a specific object, I'll start just like collecting collecting all the options and then like looking them over.
Yeah.
And linking them. And
one other tool, I just taught you this today.
Yeah.
Is Google Lens.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like this is part of the design process where you design something, you know, especially when I think about like furniture or lighting, where it's just been done a ton. And so, you know, the odds of you coming up with something unique is pretty slim. And you always want to make sure you're not kind of infringing or stepping on another designer's space. So you kind of look in the field to see what's out there and make sure like, oh, my chair idea is unique enough.
Yeah.
But there's not like a good way to like be very sure of it, right? Because you know, there's a gazillion chairs or whatever. So
right.
I've been starting to use Google Lens as a way to kind of cross-reference. And if you guys haven't tried it yet, but I mean, it's just simple. You can take a picture of anything, you know, whether it's, you know, a chair on the street or like, you know, a lamp render that you did, and Google will find the exact chair or similar chairs.
Yeah. Well, we were out at lunch today, and there were these chairs, you know, outside. We were going to sit down, and I was like, Nick, are these hay chairs?
Yeah.
And we're like, no, well, on the bottom it says IKEA, and Nick was like, step aside, like put on his sunglasses and was like, check this out. Yeah. And then just, you know, you shot it with the lens.
Yeah.
And then it came back that it was the Hey collaboration with IKEA.
Yeah. And it wasn't even like a good photo. It was just like a photo from across the street. And just like, it's wild how like, you know, the AI can do that.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's AI.
That was great.
I mean, that's a segue to our next topic. But we still have another design news too. Just
one more.
Small one. Ultimaker and MakerBot merged.
Yeah.
Big print. We got big tech now. We got big print.
Oh man.
Oh, we also had a Big Fern too. Big furniture. I mean, this was a while back. This is past 2 years.
What's that?
Herman Miller and Knoll merged.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Well, that goes to show how much of a rock I've been under.
Miller Knoll is their new.
Oh wow, interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ultimaker, MakerBot seems like. I mean, does it seem like an obvious? Yeah, like this is just sort of the consolidation of like.
Yeah.
The printers that have come out. Of like the FDM variety that have kind of like risen to the top.
Right.
Of like the pile, because I feel like, you know, for a while we were in this kind of printer war, thing of like who's going to be the best.
Right. Yeah.
And now I feel like there were like 3 major players at a certain price point, which was like Ultimaker, MakerBot, Formlabs.
Right.
That's what it seemed like to me, at least.
Yeah.
And then yeah, now we have the FDM printers combining their might to
take down Formlabs.
To take down Formlabs.
I mean, they're different tools for sure.
Yeah,
but,
definitely different.
I actually, maybe another update is I've become a Prusa boy. I mean, I've had Ultimaker. Oh, I haven't had, but like past jobs, Ultimakers, past jobs, MakerBots, and I've moved into the Prusa mindset now. And I love it. I love the Prusa. You know, I think
endless Prusabilities.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Turn it off. Turn off pocket. We got to cut that out. Oh my God. Yeah, obviously the Prusa is much more of kind of a DIY printer, but I feel like printers have gotten so good in the past 5 years. You know, I feel like I almost want to say 5 or 10 years ago, it was still this kind of thing where you had to always be fixing the printer, even like the good ones. I mean, I've had issues with both Ultimaker and MakerBot.
Yeah.
And I don't know, we've just come so far. I think, and the quality of Prusa is just as good as the other guys. And it's open. You know, you can use your own filament. You can print your own parts. And I don't know, I kind of switched over to that mindset. I think it's just nice, and haven't really had many issues with my printers.
So you don't have to do like any troubleshooting, even using different filaments.
Yeah, I've had a few fixes that I had to do, but other than that,
that's cool. Yeah, I mean, for me, it has to be so plug and play for me to be interested.
Yeah, you don't want to mess around.
I don't want to mess around. And I never really had many issues. I know people have had issues with like the MakerBot. We had the Replicator Plus and like peeling builds and stuff like that. I mean, I guess I was never really printing anything that big, but I feel like I didn't have many issues. Also, I had my printer in a closet, so I don't know if that was like insulating the temperature or something.
Yeah.
But I always really had a lot of fun using the MakerBot. And then, I mean, they came out with what was it?
The last
Method?
one. Yeah, the Method.
Which was like, I never really got to use, but that one had like more of like the heated bed, like everything.
No, we used that a little bit. At Control Labs, we had that.
No, at Control Labs they had?
Yeah.
What about, well, I know that they had it at Peloton.
Yeah. I guess we're at that point, we were not really we were just doing the design work.
The not so little secret about the New York startup scene, especially in hardware, is that like it's a small pool and so many people come from like, there's so many people's origin stories that either start at like Quirky or MakerBot or I feel like there's another startup that I'm forgetting, but like there was, and then like the startup scene here kind of like blossomed out of those things because it attracted all of this like hardware talent.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. So like, yeah, I mean the MakerBots being in different places is like partly the result of people having come from MakerBot. Yeah. But I always liked using the MakerBot printers, but now like we have like a really nice shop at Peloton, and like we've got like Ultimakers and Formlabs, but I just like submit a part.
Someone else is doing it.
Yeah.
That's nice.
But yeah, I don't know, like, does this mean, I don't know much about the merger, to be honest. Like, does this mean that like, are they still going to be developing separate product lines?
I don't know. I mean, the thing about these things is like businesses will say one thing and then 3 years down the road, it's like, oh, sorry.
Right.
It's gone. We nixed it. It's like,
and they're also like MakerBot was still owned by Stratasys. So Stratasys is now like
the
big one that owns like, I mean, but Stratasys is more of like
commercial.
Very commercial. Whereas as Ultimaker and MakerBot, their mission has always been like, low barrier to entry.
I mean, it used to be really low. It used to be like, hobbyists.
Right.
And when they kind of went prosumer, that kind of made a lot of the hobbyists upset. And even, Ultimaker used to be a lot more open than it is now. I think now they have, some new systems where you kind of are encouraged by their fulfillment.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. Actually, I have a good friend that works at MakerBot, and he had told me about the merger, I think, before it was, a big story.
Yeah. Insider trading.
No,
I'm just kidding.
Or maybe it had already gone through. Honestly, like my memory is so bad now.
Yeah.
Like my, I feel like I'm gonna blame way too much about like being a parent and having lack of sleep. But yeah, he seemed pretty excited about it.
That's good.
We should get him on the pod sometime.
Yeah, I mean, Ultimaker is like a really nice. I think they're Dutch. They Dutch?
Yeah.
Just like they make quality things.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting to see like all these companies that kind of like came up scrappy and now they're starting to like, put on their business suits.
Yeah. I mean, they got it. That's kind of the cycle of life, things. Right? Like it's, you start a company and at some point you gotta kind of sell it.
Right. It seemed like a lot of people were kind of upset about was it an acquisition of Figma by Adobe?
Mm-hmm.
It did seem like people were upset because I think many people saw Figma as like an alternative to Adobe.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I mean,
yeah, I mean, I think this is where you get to like the antitrust. Is that what they call it? Or whatever, when they try to break up big mergers, where
right,
anti-monopoly, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not as knowledgeable in that kind of stuff, but
yeah. But anyway,
the topic of the week, James. We got a good one, a juicy one, something that everyone's freaking out about. Artificial intelligence.
Yeah,
it's gonna take over. Maybe
taking our jobs.
Yeah, I think I definitely went down that rabbit hole, I guess, a couple months ago.
Yeah. Have you taken a shower since then?
I got to tell you, I had a friend of a friend who got me an invite to Midjourney, which was kind of the very first, I would say, public-ish artificial intelligent image generation software. I don't know what you want to call it. I'm sure there's a specific name for it. I think it was like a year ago or a year and a half ago, there was that, Dolly came out with this kind of blog post about like, oh, you can make an avocado chair or something, right? You can type in words and it comes out a chair. And I remember, I'm not sure if we talked about it on the podcast, but I just remember being like, kind of like amused, but not really like impressed.
Right.
It was like, okay, it's like cool or whatever, but like it's not very good.
Yeah.
And then a year goes by and now we're blown away by the stuff it can create.
Right.
But I got this invite to kind of the first public software, Midjourney, and for 5 straight days, James, I was just powering through, just making things for 5 straight days. Typing in all the chairs, all the design I could ever think of. I'm not joking either. Like I would see this is the problem when you run your own business, is like there's no boss telling you like, oh, you better do your work today. Yeah. It's like I'm just for 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, and it's a Discord app, so even on my phone I can do it.
Oh my god.
I was just obsessed.
Yeah.
Staying up to like 3 a.m. doing it. I don't know what it was. It was just like this wild thing.
So maybe we should, for anybody who's not so familiar with it, your mom, for instance.
Yeah.
Like, how do these AI systems work? How do you like get images out of them? What is the process?
Well, I think a lot of it is, they've created these machine learning algorithms which essentially just scrape the internet for images. It just goes on Google Images and just searches everything.
Yeah.
And when you have that much data, you can kind of extrapolate what certain words mean. So if you type in dog to Google Images, the AI, if it scrolls enough, it kind of understands what is a dog. It understands what that is. But it's also a computer, so it's searching every dog breed, every iteration of a dog, every adjective. So it learns all these words, and I think initially a lot of people thought it was like cutting and pasting Google Images, but it's not doing that at all. It's much more of, imagine like teaching a toddler what a dog is, and then the toddler can paint like hyper realistic images, and you give them a paintbrush and they paint a dog. So that's my understanding from what I've read of kind of the overview of how these things work. And I think even the developers who created some of this code can't really draw connections at a certain point. I mean, they know kind of the basis of like feed it information.
Yeah.
But when it gets into like, well, why does an AI think dogs have ears shaped like this? It's like there's no way to figure that out. It's just a bunch of nodes kind of making random connections and reinforcing themselves.
That's wild. Yeah, I feel like I first caught wind of all these things that were happening from Discord and also from Design Theory. John
Mariello did a good video on it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think also, what was funny is when it was at the very beginning of all this, where it wasn't really well known yet that, people had access to this AI software. I wanted to see if I could get a Instagram post on Render Weekly. I wanted to see if Render Weekly would repost an AI image and not a keyshot rendering or just a 3D rendering.
Yeah.
I think that week was what was it, paperweights? And so I did a bunch of paperweights and they posted it. And I remember like people were really confused, which I think does bring up a lot of, we could get into like the ethical or like the idea of, is it design? Is it design if you aren't designing the thing? Like,
right.
Is it design if you're just typing in the prompt?
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, the interesting part about it to me is that it kind of turns every designer using it into more of like a design director or curator than it does like a designer.
Right.
Because like, I think that there's a lot of concern out there that something like AI, DALL-E, Midjourney, whatever ends up, being the big one or the big two, will sort of like take over the jobs of people who are like, sort of like purely aesthetic design and like maybe junior designers like coming up with ideas.
Yeah. I think like the fear is like a lot of the kind of reskinning jobs, just kind of your generic branch, just throwing some generic, speaker case on a speaker and selling it.
Right.
Or, I even think about like, I think what a lot of people think is like marketing will just start using AI and not even have to hire a designer.
Right.
It's like, oh, we need to make X amount of SKUs. We could hire a designer, or we could just pull images off of AI and then send it to China and get it made.
Totally.
Which is probably not how to make a great product, but it'll make a product.
Right. Well, yeah. So in that case, like completely eliminating the designer from the equation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think too, I've had some ideas about this of like, what if you could literally, and I'm sure people have done it or have started doing it. It's so new too. It's only been happening in the past 3 months where these are kind of widely publicly available, where we could just create a project. I think I was kind of working on this stool concept but stool, side table, something really simple, and make it in AI, and then send the AI image to China and just say make it, and see what they come up with.
Yeah,
it's more of a conceptual project, but I think specifically with that, what I ran into, the issue is I wanted the project to be about AI and be about this idea that AI had created this design and I didn't, or maybe I did, or whatever the story was. But the AI was so good that it made a design that doesn't look like it was made by AI, which is funny. It just made a simple stool. And I was like, the one I picked out was one that was like, I wanted to pick the weird ones because those are the ones that felt like they were designed by a computer, which is just kind of ironic because like it's almost like AI was too good in a weird way.
Right. Yeah, I think the most shocking thing to designers and creatives is that like we've always been told that our jobs are like the most secure in terms of like, will AI ever replace us?
Right, because it's creative, right?
Yeah. And now it's like, oh,
wait, we're the first ones to go.
Might be, yeah, exactly. Like it's not even the truck drivers; it's the designers.
It is kind of funny to think about that. I think too, there's kind of the argument of, well, AI is just taking Google images, right? Like it's taking inspiration from Google or whatever kind of repository. It's taking images from the internet. And, you can't really say that's like creative, or maybe it's less creative than designers because, we take inspiration from everywhere.
Right.
But in reality, like, we're taking the same inspiration. Like we are also like taking inspiration from images online. Yeah. And even throughout our life, we encounter an object, and that object also probably has an image represented online as well. You think about like, I think especially in New York, I feel like a lot of us take inspiration from just like the city.
Right.
There's plenty of like you could type in, chair designed by traffic cone or inspired by a traffic cone, and
And I feel like at a certain point in your career, like if you're designing for a certain brand or your brand very well, like I think that this was discussed a long time ago when there was the whole discourse on Instagram of like, design lies, like what is industrial design? Like we're only showing like the pretty stuff and we're not showing everything else.
Yeah.
And so like, I think in a way, like, this is just expediting like one portion of the design process, and potentially just like enriching your exploration. But like, we're also our own AI algorithms, whatever, like you were saying. And I feel like at a certain point in my career, like I'm more or less able to like figure out what the right like physical solution for a problem is without much iteration. Like I can sort of like see my way to like the idea fairly quickly.
Yeah. But if you have enough constraints, for sure.
But then it's like, okay, well now I need to like CAD it up, which I guess there are maybe some AIs that are getting to the point of like 2D to 3D.
Yeah.
But then it's like, okay, well then I need the physical feedback from that model. Once I print it, model it, whatever, tweak, and then I need to DFM it, which like at this point AI, like I could see it getting there, like being able to do a bit of that. But I do just feel like there's this huge element to the remainder of the process that AI hasn't captured yet.
Right.
I mean, I know that like Fusion 360 has like the AI of sort of like, you take an object, you show like where the loads are coming from, and it'll put out something that like is sort of like optimized in terms of material
stuff. Yeah.
Gives you a bunch of options. So like, yeah, I just don't know when all of that is going to merge together to like capture the entire process.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I think obviously those tools, I'm sure, are coming. This idea of creating 3D objects. I mean, obviously, I don't know if you've seen this or not, but Meta's 3D world that they're building for like VR Horizons, I think it's called. I believe it has some kind of AI capability where you can type in, I want to see a building with trees, and it'll populate a building with trees. Now, if I don't know what that data set is based off of, like, I wonder if they're feeding it like every game asset that's ever been created. I think that's kind of the logical step for the 3D world. I think when it comes to design, though, that's going to be tough because, you know, all these AI systems run off just mountains of data. You need mountains of data to get these things to work nicely. And it's going to be hard to grab all that data to create like a speaker box housing or something. It might work. I mean, I think about like GrabCAD, you know, that has kind of data attached to like names and, you know, it is interesting. I mean, I'm sure it's coming, you know.
Yeah. But it feels like
we're not going to get replaced yet.
We're not going to get replaced yet. And I don't know that it's going to replace us or just like make our jobs something slightly different.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is the common thing with any new technology, right? It's like, whether it was the printing press or like tractors or whatever it was like, you know, farmers were like, oh no, they're going to replace us. But no, they just bought the tool and they use the tool. Yeah.
And right now it definitely like, I feel like for the most part, if you showed me an image of a product that was designed by a person versus designed by AI, I think I could tell which is which.
Right. This year, next year.
Yeah. Next year, maybe not. But like, I haven't seen anything through AI where I'm like, oh, that's a beautiful object. Like, I haven't gotten to that point yet. I've seen a lot of AI images that have been created, and I just haven't been impressed with like the final product. Like, I could see like a step further being impressed by it. Right. But like, I think there's still some sort of like uncanny valley thing happening.
I think so. One of the big things that I've kind of realized, especially with AI, is a huge part of the value of design is the story, right? Or the brand, right? And they're kind of one and the same. And I think this is kind of where these images or designs kind of feel empty. It's like, even, you know, I feel like I've created some pretty good looking, you know, AI generated chairs, and they're beautiful, and, you know, I could see them in a store, but they don't have a story. Yeah. They're just kind of,
other than they were AI generated.
Right. And it's also like, it was so easy. There wasn't like a journey to come up with the idea. It was just, it popped into existence. Right. And, you know, as silly as it sounds, it almost feels like whether it was a Post-it note sketch or you worked, you know, a year on thousands of concepts to come up with an idea, there's still a journey there. Even that Post-it note sketch had, you know, if it was a single Post-it note sketch, it still feels like a story. Yeah. And that's what was so, I guess, stressed to me after coming out of my 5-day sprint of like designing, was like, designers should be storytellers. And the thing is like, oh, of course, like that's how it's always been. Yeah. That's how the best designers have always done it.
Right. It doesn't capture that. It doesn't capture the business of design. Right. It doesn't capture like the relationships that you have to build. Yeah. The like, you know, the vendors that you have to get in touch with, the like quality control. Like it doesn't capture like what it really takes to make a great product, because it really is just that beginning sliver, like that spark moment of like, oh, that's something. Yeah. The thing that I kind of thought was interesting about it is like, you know, I had that made up quote series on my Instagram, and I had that quote of like, a great sketch of a bad idea is a great idea. Yeah. And I feel like what AI could do is kind of like, once again, like there's all sorts of technology that comes along that sort of levels the playing field. And I feel like what it could do is prioritize, like you're talking about with storytelling, but it could prioritize the idea over the image.
Yeah.
But I also think that like the way that AI is generated, it's like industrial designers need to now become like, they really need to know their history of the visual arts.
Well, this is a whole other thing.
And they really need to like almost become like English minors or something, because it is all like
spell check.
language prompts. And so like knowing your history of design and also like being able to like speak eloquently or use like the right adjectives or, you know, whatever to like prompt the AI, like that's sort of like a new art form within like idea generation.
Yeah. I think another thing too that has been interesting from like an ethical standpoint is when people are typing in inspired by so-and-so, inspired by person, especially like a living person, where it's like inspired by Jasper Morrison or Burlek Brothers, because you'll get like, you know, relatively inspired by work when you type that in. It is kind of interesting because obviously AI is looking at the objects designers have created and taking visual inspiration and not necessarily philosophy. This goes back to the story thing. Yeah, it's like, you know, you type in chair inspired by Dieter Rams and you'll see a chair that looks like a record player, right? Like,
right.
And that's not necessarily Dieter Rams' philosophy, but it's how his philosophy kind of influenced his aesthetic.
Yeah.
So we're still like ahead of that, where it's not necessarily like copying a philosophy of a designer.
Right.
And is that even like, is that okay to like type in another designer's name? And I think it kind of goes back to this idea of that, well, we already are inspired by other designers.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's interesting because like you mentioned designers that are like Jasper Morrison, like, and I feel like we're in this phase also right now where things are starting to go from, I would say there's sort of like been this minimalist, almost like Scandinavian minimalist phase that we've been in for the last couple of years.
You think so? In what? I think we're in full maximalism.
In a certain realm. Well, maximalism maybe in fashion, but do you think maximalism within industrial design?
I think I don't know. So I think industrial design is probably a little bit behind like mainstream culture, but I think, maximalism in terms of like if you ever open up TikTok and see what kind of products people are really interested in on TikTok, you know, TikTok's kind of the culture is, right? Like it's the youth culture, and we're getting old. I'm almost
where
30.
The youths are.
Listen, we're gonna age out, James. We're not gonna be cool anymore. You know, it's definitely lots of colors, lots of shapes, lots of funky stuff.
Yeah.
You think about like the New York art furniture design scene. It's definitely a lot more, I don't know, material focused. Just
But I guess
it also depends, I guess.
I feel like
what world you're in, but
corporate, it's like minimal, like Scandinavian. I feel like maybe like indie designer, it's like almost postmodern maximal.
Yes.
But I feel like where AI is going to take us is into, and I tweeted about this. I have a Twitter. It's like Art Nouveau. Like it's Art Nouveau,
but it's 2.0.
Yeah, because like I feel like that Yeezy foam runner is very Art Nouveau, like I was saying in the beginning, and I feel like one of the reasons that we haven't been as passionate about a design movement like Art Nouveau is because it's very complicated. Like to think about modeling those things in SolidWorks or whatever for like the normal average designer to do that is extremely complicated. It's not easy to do organic well.
That's a good point.
And I feel like what AI design might do is push us into a new Art Nouveau phase where it's like, even the stuff that comes out of Fusion where you're generating AI
Right.
feels very Art Nouveau to me.
I think I would consider that more generative design. And
Yeah,
less
but
artificial
if you
intelligence.
look,
But I get what you're saying.
if you look at the generative stuff,
Right.
and then you place it next to an Art Nouveau piece, there's something
Harmony, something.
there's
there.
a harmony there.
Yeah.
Because it feels more, they both feel very organic.
I think too, even to add on that, especially with VR sketching, Gabby Sketch and all these, amazing tools, it will aid in that organicness, right? People are doing a lot more organic stuff in like Blender and more kind of generative software. I think you're right. I think there's going to be Art Nouveau, as you say.
I guess I'm like just kind of, I both love and hate the sort of minimalist phase, and even like I feel like maybe it's being in New York, but I'm also like sort of getting tired of the postmodern phase as well. I feel like there's a richness of design and art that we're missing in our lives, because like it's so much more economical, especially for independent designers and everybody, to design in a more minimalist framework.
Yeah.
Because like it's easy to conceive. It's much easier to like control the quality of something that's much more minimal.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's more,
it's
more
like
appeal, more mass appeal.
It's economical. Like it's very economical to like the ideas can come and be realized much more quickly,
Right.
basically. And so I feel like we might be entering into like, this much more ornate, like almost romantic Art Nouveau style design, where things are just like a bit more complex, but not complicated, like beautifully complex, like a Gaudi cathedral or something like that. I don't know.
I can see that. I mean, I think that's cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
But I love all facets of design, but I just don't see like AI. I don't know that it will take over like like the minimalist front. I feel like it can only sort of take over the maximalist front in a way, because like why would you even feed AI something minimal, because it's so much
A box with fillets on it.
yeah.
Okay, well,
I don't know.
Here's what I will say. I mean, I think the practical use that I've used it for is more of, I almost feel like AI is almost like a friend that will tell you, you'll show them your design problem that you've been working on, and they'll tell you like, oh, hey, have you thought about doing it this way?
Yeah.
That's how AI feels to me currently.
Right.
Where I'm not really taking, straight inspiration from these images. It's more of, I'll have a problem, and maybe it's doing like a light or something, and I'll just generate a bunch of AI concepts, and then one of the concepts will have like a small detail that I haven't really seen or thought about before, and it's like, oh, that's an interesting detail. Like, what if I riffed on it? Or like, what if I did this? Or what if I included it in this way?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it feels like from a practical standpoint.
That's cool. Yeah, I think one of the points that John Mariello brought up in his design theory video that I thought was impactful was something like what you're talking about, which is he used the example of like the person playing Go against the AI computer, and like so Go is like supposed to be like one of the more like complicated like board games,
Right.
And so the AI made a move that like nobody had even considered before.
Yeah.
And so like you're talking about, it unlocked a totally new way of sort of looking at the game.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that it's very possible that AI could just like unblock something for us creatively, rather than like remove us from the picture.
I think it feels like It's the antidote to designer's block. Is it?
It might be.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like we could talk about AI for hours and hours because there's just so much
Well,
packed into it.
I did have another thought. I was thinking, you know, this idea of story and brand is so important, but how long will that stay around? Because AI can already generate like stories, GPT-3. I think that's what they call it, the language system. You know, you can tell an AI to generate you a story. And does it generate you a story around like an object? I never really tried that, but like I think it would be interesting to, you know, create a design starting with the story and then feeding the story into, you know, an image generation AI.
Yeah.
To kind of to complete that gap there. You know, like the image doesn't have the story.
Yeah. It's something, I mean, that's interesting because like, I know that that's a part of our friend McKay Nilsson. That's a part of his process is like sitting down and writing about design, his design before actually like sketching or making something.
Yeah.
And I've sort of integrated that into my process as well. And I feel like it does result in more unique designs when you're starting with like the story rather than just like, oh, what would look really cool?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what I've been also, I would agree. I think I've been trying to write more, and I feel like I've heard this before, but it's almost like if you can write down and describe the design on words before you ever make the thing and make it really clear and succinct, then when you make the thing, it's, you know, 10 times better than you would if you were just kind of searching.
Right.
You know, with just the form.
Totally.
But
cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Was there any other like thoughts about AI that we wanted to cover? I think it is interesting, again, just to go back to the idea that I don't think we're going to get replaced, but it does feel like the junior level kind of reskinning jobs, you know, especially for maybe companies that don't value design, you know, I mean, especially during maybe this, you know, recession or downturn, it feels like I can see some marketing person, you know, saying, oh, you know, we don't have enough designers to work on this thing. Let me just generate an image.
It's possible. I want to leave, I want to leave our audience with
something
like
happy.
is more probably student based with like a more positive note, I guess, which is like, well, first of all, like if you can get on these like AI, you know, if you can like acquire them, just start using them, start understanding them. But also like I do feel like the junior designer job, I think, is just going to transform. Like I think people are still going to care about how you think, because like how you think is like going to be about solutions,
right?
And not necessarily about your hard skills. I think hard skills are still going to be a thing. I've been thinking a lot about how like it actually makes a lot of sense. There's so many, including yourself and myself, like we've used design as almost a performance on social media. And I feel like even more so now, like design and the fine arts, like visual fine arts, sculpture, like it is going to be a lot about the performance and like the documentation of it. Like that is like still going to fascinate people.
Yeah.
And you know, there's AI software that will like shade a sketch, like a really simple sketch. It will render that. So like that's another, I feel like this is just going to be like a step towards like being more of like, you know, a hybrid Android designer. Like this could just be
it does
that
feel
it's
like a superpower.
Enhancing our capabilities
100%.
At a faster rate and not a full-on replacement. But you know, it's hard to say.
I mean, I definitely agree with that perspective just in general. Like I think if you are eager and open to embracing the new tools and the new ways of working, and you're always kind of eager to learn, then you'll be okay. You know,
Yeah.
like, you know, you, as long as you're moving forward, you know,
Right.
you'll be okay. I think it's going to be the people that don't want to adapt, you know, the people that are still kind of think AI is bad or don't want to try the new tool. I think that's going to be the tough nut to crack, but
Totally.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to see how it evolves. I mean, it's this crazy thing.
I don't think it's the last time we're going to talk about it.
For sure. Yeah, I'm sure that another crazy app will come out soon with AI.
We're going to all of our podcasts going forward are going to be all AI generated.
It totally could, because we have enough data. There's enough data there to plug in and make, you know, my voice and your voice.
Yeah. I just feel like we're still in a time where like technology feels like cold and distant, and like I don't think that there's like, especially after the pandemic and working remotely, I don't think there's anything quite like the human touch. And so like I think like that's still going to be important going forward, is like the human touch.
Yeah.
And I feel like somehow subconsciously we all can like feel when something was like like human generated versus AI generated, and maybe like the only way that you can get that into the AI is to like interfere as a human into that process.
Yeah.
But yeah,
We'll see.
we will see.
All right. I think that was a good episode.
That was great.
I guess we'll call it. All right. And as always, I'm Nick.
And I'm James.
Peace.
Later.